Thank you for joining us this evening and for coming along when the sunshine might have had you staying outside or possibly enjoying our air conditioning in here. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Laura Gould. I'm a barrister at King's Chambers in Manchester, and I'm also co-chair of the Social Mobility Subcommittee with Chris Loweth. And we've set up this event this evening, very ably assisted by the Inn staff. And I'm also on the EDI committee and the representative for the Northern Circuit for Lincoln's Inn. I'm going to be chairing tonight's event, which we hope is going to be very useful for all of you, both in person here and those of us that are watching online and that might be catching up with the recording after the event. I think you all know that you've signed up to this event because it's for reconnecting with the Inn, and what we're really hoping is to encourage you to come back, use the Inn's facilities, become more comfortable in and around the Inn, whether you're based in London already or whether you're visiting from outside. And then we hope that you might want to get involved with some more of our events, such as volunteering, that we'll come on to talk about this evening. The talk will take around about an hour with questions and answers at the end. Those of you who are online, if we can ask you to put your questions in the question and answer box rather than the chat box on Zoom. Those of you in person, we will have a microphone, but there'll also be a code for the Slido website on the final page of the PowerPoint that will remain on the screen. So if you want to ask a question confidentially, you can do it that way, because this is the opportunity to ask all the questions that you always wanted to and thought you might sound a bit silly if you did. You absolutely won't, but if you're not comfortable putting your hand up, then you can use the Slido function. Now, afterwards, we're going to have a drinks reception in the room just behind the theatre that we're in at the moment, and you'll be able to tell those of us who are more involved with the Inn and more regular attenders by the fact that we've got blue coloured name tags. And that's to let you know that you can come and talk to us if you've got any questions that you didn't want to ask in a talk. Hopefully we should be able to answer them. And we're very happy just to have a chat generally as well, even if you haven't got any questions, you'd just like to come and meet us. Okay, when it comes to questions at the end, if people could just raise their hands. I think that covers everything that we've got at the moment. Oh, usual question we get online. As I say, the recording will be made available, as will the slides, and the recording will go on the Inn's YouTube channel, which does exist and has some excellent talks on there already, and we'll be directing you to the website quite a lot through this as well. So I'm now going to hand over to Clara, the Member Engagement Manager, and she's going to give you a brief overview of the governance of the Inn, so you know how things run. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Laura. So as many of you already know, the Inn has existed for over 600 years. In fact, we're celebrating our 600-year anniversary this year and next year. And it's a place where barristers come to learn from those who are already established within the profession. While things have changed, the core of what we do has not. And we are here to support our members and help our members support each other throughout their careers. In terms of membership, currently we have 30,000 members, over whom just half are UK nationals, and over 100 different nationalities represented in our membership as well. And the most senior level of membership is that of a bencher or Masters of the Bench. Benchers are elected from members of Hall and include High Court judges, employed barristers, QCs, and a significant number of other people who haven't taken silk. And the Inn has around 260 governing benchers, some of whom will be here tonight at the drinks reception. The officers of the Inn are benchers, and they're to hold certain positions within the Inn for a one-year term. And the treasurer is the head of the Inn. So the treasurer is supported by other officers, namely the master of the library, the keeper of the Black Book, and the master of the walks. The role of the dean of chapel is usually held by the keeper of the Black Book, but also may be held by another officer. So our current treasurer is Jonathan Crowe QC, and I hope that many of you will meet him in the current year. And the new treasurer, who takes over in January, will be the Right Honourable Sir Geoffrey Voss. So that's our membership, and on to our employees. So the day-to-day work of the Inn is done by a professional team of employees, led by our under-treasurer Anne Sharp and the executive team. The Inn has around 140 employees, and we work across a wide variety of specialisms. So I've got a flow chart of the types of different departments that we have. And as you can see, they vary from education to IT to finance, HR, and the usual functions of most organisations. And there are representatives on this panel speaking here tonight from our employees. So we provide several facilities and services for our members that you might find helpful and enjoyable. And what we will be doing tonight is outlining these this evening and the other opportunities to get involved if you would like to reconnect with us. So I'm now going to hand you over to the Inn's librarian, Dunn, who will be talking about the library.
Hello. Well, first of all, just to remind you that the Inn's library, i.e. your library, is the oldest law library in the country and almost without doubt the greatest law library in the country as well. So that's your library, so do make use of it. And if you haven't been there recently, do go and have a look at it. It's the most beautiful building. It's got everything you need in a law library, you know, walls, ceiling, floors, that sort of thing, and a larger than life size statue of Lord Erskine. So every library should have that. We've got a great legacy of really never having thrown away anything useful. And not only that, adding to things at a prodigious rate. So we've got this astonishing resource of historical materials from other jurisdictions, all the sorts of niche questions that might come up from time to time that you can't make provision for yourselves. We're there to provide backup for that. And we've carried on adding new media and databases. And again, we're able to provide a very wide range of resources that, again, might be too specialist for many of your chambers and employers. So there's a huge resource there to make use of. People who visited it in the last few years have had to put up with a great deal of noise and dust from building works. And I'm delighted to say that we are really in the final furlong of those being completed. So, you know, all being well, the next time you visit, you'll be spared the dust, the hammering, and the occasional medley of show tunes courtesy of the contractors. So it should all be reverting to a much more civilized space. And we also have additional reader spaces in the new library basement. That is actually rather nicer than it sounds, because they are under light wells with nice study carrels, and we anticipate those being very popular indeed. In fact, we carefully made sure we didn't include lockable cupboards, because we thought people would start reclaiming them for their own. So that will be something that's happening soon. We have always provided training on library and research skills by the library team. And as with a lot of people in the pandemic, we've been using Zoom and other online platforms for being able to deliver courses. So not only are we able to offer training in the library, but we're now able to offer that remotely as well. And in addition to a set program of training courses that we do for students and pupils, we also offer refresher training for members as well. And that can either be a sort of fairly general session, or it can be something very bespoke. So if you just wanted help with a particular database or research in a particular area, then we would be delighted to have a chat with you about setting something up like that. And the library team who will deal with training and with inquiries is very experienced. Many of us have been at the Inn for quite a long time, or in other law libraries. So you're drawing on quite a range of experience. So do get in touch if that's of interest. And we can either do something bespoke for individuals, or if you wanted something that you could offer more widely in chambers or your organization, then we're very happy to do that as well. Also, recently, we were able to extend our copyright license, which might sound terribly, terribly tedious, but is actually terribly, terribly useful, because we were previously only able to provide material if it was for court or for private study, both of which were quite narrowly defined. And we can now provide it much more readily for commercial research as well. So that is something that's, again, making it easier to provide a service for people outside London as well as within London. We've also, in terms of recent changes, we've got a new display cabinet. The slide above fortuitously shows me demonstrating the old display cabinet, but we actually have a new display cabinet. And one of the advantages with that is that it offers us the chance to show people some of the treasures that we have in the library, both legal and non-legal material, and make those available briefly, because otherwise they have to just sit in a climate controlled strong room and nobody can see them. So that's a way of making the material more available. If you're based outside London and access to the library is difficult, we provide an inquiry service, and the phone number and website for that are on the website. As I said, we provide a document supply service, and also if it's material that we don't have ourselves, then we have arrangements with a number of other UK law libraries, and we have links with various other law libraries in other jurisdictions. So we actually have access to material beyond our own collections. So do remember that if you're looking for something particularly niche. In terms of providing remote access to resources, we're often asked, can you, as a member, just log in remotely to all our databases? Sadly, generally, we're not able to do that. We've had discussions with publishers who are understandably unwilling to do that, because obviously you would all cancel your Lexis and Westall subscriptions. But we have had moderate success in that you can contact us and we can provide you with username and password to legal textbooks online, Bloomsbury, and also to the Lexis PSL service as well. So that's at least going some way to setting a precedent for that. And if you haven't set up that access, then feel free to contact the library and we can provide that. Finally, in the this anniversary year, there are a number of ways in which we're supporting that. And again, that links to the heritage of the inn. So on the website, you can now access some examples of manuscripts and items from the library and archives, including the first 9 volumes of the Black Books. So if you're up for a challenge and you want to read some impenetrable 15th century chancery hand in a mixture of Latin, English, and law French, that's your opportunity. My colleague Megan, the archivist, is also doing a series of monthly videos telling the history of the inn through our objects and manuscripts. Those go out in the members' newsletter, so do follow those links, and they're also available on the website. And finally, the library is also responsible for organising events for the Inn's Historical Society, the Black Book Society, and again, details of our events, 5 of which are scheduled for the rest of the year. Those are on the website. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dunstan. Well, I have written down in capital letters, contact library for access to Lexis PSL, rather than the 15th century Latin, but good to know there's something for every lawyer out there. I'm now going to hand over to the Venerable Sheila Watson, who's going to speak to you about the Inn's Chapel.
Hi, it's really good to have an opportunity to point you to one of the Inn's historic buildings. We're about to have our 400th anniversary. It's the second chapel on the Inn site. The previous one was where the War Memorial is. It's iconic on the outside, at least. You'd recognize it, but you've probably walked underneath it through the undercroft, even if you haven't been in the chapel. Because coming up the stairs, you can see behind me one person slightly tentatively walking up the stairs to chapel can be more daunting than we'd like. One very senior member confessed to me a couple of years ago that when they were a student, even though they knew where the chapel was, it took them 2 years before they dared to walk up those stairs and actually discover us. And so, but at the top of them is the chapel, that is your chapel as members of the inn, and you are most welcome there at any time. We're relatively multi-purpose. Some people find that we have a quiet space for reflection. And I'm glad to say that as of today, chapel is now open again Monday to Friday daily from 9 until 5, after the closures we had because of the pandemic, but also more recently for works. Other people find that the staircase and the undercroft are a really good place to have a sandwich or a quiet chat, particularly if it's a rainy day. There are others who make more traditional use of the chapel space. You can see, I think up there, one wedding couple who were the only ones I think we've had so far who've dared to shimmy down the aisle, but we had everyone on their feet for that, which was wonderful. And any member is of course welcome to discuss their wedding in terms of a wedding in chapel, as well as a reception through the member events team, or indeed a civil marriage in that way if they would prefer that. Equally, any member is welcome to talk about their children's baptisms. And you'll see a slide up there of me rather precariously leaning. We don't have a font because we're a chapel, not a parish church. So we have one of the inn's historic silver bowls, which we use for the baptism. And so I was rather precariously holding the child who had a wonderful bonnet on her head, which made it slightly more precarious until fortunately a bit of it came off. But the couple who are there and who were very happy that we used the photograph today were married in chapel 10 years ago, and that's, you can see the family is very much part of that. Every Sunday in term time, we do have a morning service at 11:30, and there's a chance to have coffee together beforehand, and sometimes there is a drink and lunch. Lunch at the moment, because of some of the constrictions on the inn, is not every week, but tends to be for special services, and it's a chance, whether it's coffee or whether it's lunch, for members of the bench and others to chat together and network. The lunches that are happening follow special events this year. We have, for example, Jeremy Morris, the former head of house at Trinity Cambridge, speaking on F.D. Morris. His is one of the slightly dour portraits in the lobby of chapel as you come in, which personally I found rather off-putting until I found out rather more about him. It's the 150th anniversary of his death this year. He was one of the founders of Christian socialism, and he was an activist at a time when all around the inn were not the offices and coffee bars of today, but slums. He did two things. One was he inspired people like Octavia Hill, who was one of the first people to provide social housing in London. He also was the founder of Queen's College School in the middle of London, which was one of first in terms of encouraging women's education. And so it's always interesting, and Dunstan will agree with this from the library point of view, that when you start delving into the archives, just to find the connections that can be made and the inspiration that can come from the past. We've also, at the other end of the scale, as one of the special events coming up this term, got the all-age or family day, when there is a more all-age friendly service, followed by a barbecue, followed by all kinds of fun and games around the inn. You might find either the treasurer running around the fountain in one of the races, or you can join in the tug of war, which usually happens at the end. Other parts of the inn's year, one sees the chapel as one of the places that connects us with the past and with the present and looking to the future, as we can see this at Remembrance, when we gather both round the War Memorial and in the chapel, as we remember those who gave their lives from the Inns of Court, but also have the Inns of Court City and Yeomanry Regiment with us. They're based here, and so we're very much connected to those who serve today. and the candlelit chapel in service in chapel at Christmas, along with the Christmas lunch, which is normally a sellout in the Great Hall, is there for all, and it's part of the rhythm of past and present. Music is one of our highlights that I ought to mention. We have a small professional choir that's got a huge range. Our organist was happy to cope when I started speaking one day and asked him off the cuff if he'd mind playing the start of a Beatles song for me, when actually he's really much more at home, not only in chapel, but in playing at somewhere like the Proms. And you will find some of the choir on stage in different places in London and elsewhere. So they are worth listening to. Overall, we're part of the historic heart of the inn. We're a significant Renaissance chapel, and we've got some rare Flemish stained glass in the windows. Some of that is up in York at the moment, where it's being conserved, and will be coming back this summer. But one of the unusual things about chapel is if you go in normally in a church building, you would find that the window at the far end, the east window, is full of religious symbols. Ours is not. Ours is full of the treasurer's coats of arms. And so it's a statement that's being made about here is a place that is a place for family and members of the inn. And this goes right up to the modern day, to the current ones, which are further back in chapel. If you come and visit us or haven't already, I'd always say to you, do look out for the one that's got a windsurfer and a dog on it. It always cheers me up as I walk past it. The other person whom I need to mention before I finish on chapel is the 17th century poet and priest John Dunn, who was a student of the inn. I'm told he didn't particularly enjoy his legal doings then, but he became preacher of the inn and Dean of St. Paul's after that. And you can see his portrait too in the lobby. He wrote some well-known lines provoked by his Christian faith and by the bell of the old chapel. You'll see the picture of the bell there. It was one of the rare opportunities to see it and to get a photograph of it when it was done for repair last year, because it has been in chapel since the 17th century. And it is this bell which provoked Dunn to write the famous lines, "Never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." And that bell still tolls to mark the death of a bencher. Dunn reminds us in that poem with the bell, "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Any man's death diminishes me." It's wrapped in 17th century language rather than in the more inclusive language we get today. But it does say to us, however much we value our independence, we do need one another. And for me, it's that African insight that Desmond Tutu pointed to so often of Ubuntu, that my life is inextricably bound up with yours. I am because we are. We are all part of the community here. And today is a chance for us just to remind one another of that fact and to know that we're free to ask one another. I still get lost after 6 years in this place, where things are, as well as any of the other questions that life is throwing at us, or have a chance to support one another or enjoy life together. If I, as preacher or the chapel, can be of any help to you, then please do let me know and be in touch. I can be contacted by email or through the Treasurer's office. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila. And that's a lovely lead into some more information on how you can get involved in our community at the inn. And this is both for those of you based in London and based elsewhere throughout the UK. And I'm going to talk to you very briefly about volunteering. And I say briefly because I could talk for quite some time, but I'm sure we all want to know, how is it that we use the MCR and get our lunches? But this is a way in which you can really start to feel part of the Inn's community by getting involved in volunteering. Now, I think the web page is up behind me and there's a huge amount of information on there and contact details for the relevant staff members. If you've got any questions about particularly what might work for you, what your availability is, how that might fit in, and what your expertise is and how the Inn might best use that. I've been involved with volunteering for the Inn for 11, 12 years now, something like that. And it's exceptionally rewarding, one, to see how you can help the students, junior practitioners and others, but actually for your own practice, particularly when it comes to advocacy training, which is what you might particularly have in mind when you think about volunteering. We don't tend to get feedback as barristers if you're someone who is in course and you're doing your own advocacy. And by teaching advocacy, which you can start off with the bar students without you having done any training, just being a qualified practitioner, you would be able to do that if you've gone all the way through and are practicing. You are giving feedback to students, which causes you to think, well, what would I do differently? Why would I do that differently? How can I maybe give an example of that? It's a really good starting point to draw into focus your own practice and reflect on that. And then you can go through to teaching the pupil and new practitioner advocacy. And that does require you to go on a training course to learn the Hempel method, which some of you might remember, the quite structured way that you got feedback and had the demonstration from the tutor. And again, that can be really rewarding and useful to your own practice, as well as actually really good fun. But you don't have to go that far and you don't have to make it that formal. Now, they're somewhat involved volunteering commitments because they tend to take place on weekends, or for some of the London people courses, they can happen just on one day in the Inn, for example. But if you don't perhaps have that much time, other ways that you can get involved include mentoring, which at the moment is aimed just at mentoring students. We will match you up, the staff will match you up with a student who's on the bar course that's relatively local to you, and this is interested in a practice area that you're hopefully able to comment on that you're involved in. But it's often actually just the general experience of practice that the students find really helpful for you to give them some advice. And again, that can be really rewarding for you. Other ways in which you can get involved, well, there's an awful lot that's online now. I don't think the advocacy training is anymore, but some of the ethics sessions certainly have been. Some of the more less perhaps specific topics, things like how best to interview, how to put forward the best application forms. There are lots of qualifying sessions that you can get involved with online. There are also scholarship interviews, some of which are still taking place this year online. And again, as you become more involved with the Inn, there might be things you hear people talk about that you're interested in, but don't be afraid to get in touch and ask about it at this stage, even if you haven't done scholarship interviews before, and the staff will talk to you about your experience to see if that's something that you'd be a good fit for. In terms of, there's also marshalling schemes for students that involve judges, and a particularly rewarding course is a pupillage foundation scheme, which is for students who finish the bar course, have done a full round of scholarship pupillage applications and still haven't got pupillage. And the success rate for students on that course is really, really high. And so again, a great way that you can become involved. And there is a scheme both outside of London as well as based in London for you to be able to get involved with. We are looking for new volunteers, we always are, but particularly those of you based out on circuit or at the employed bar that can give a different perspective on the career of a barrister, and one that is equally as valid and useful to students and that they perhaps don't hear about as often. That's a very brief whistle-stop tour because of the time that we've got available. If anyone does have any questions, either ask those at the end, or I'll be around to talk about that afterwards, as will Clara. Just a little side note, in terms of delivering these sorts of events and facilities, anything the Inn can for our members, there will be a diversity questionnaire coming out for all members. It's not going to be onerous at all. It's in terms of social mobility and protected characteristics, practice areas, and we would just like to draw that to the attention of you all now, because sometimes we know we don't always look at every email that comes out, but this is a big project that's being undertaken. There's a lot of goodwill behind it, and there's going to be lots of effort taken to analyse the results. And the more information that we get from you as our members, the better that we can provide for the modern Lincoln's Inn. And that also goes with events such as this and the volunteering, etc. Just get in touch with the staff or come and have a chat with somebody who you know is already involved. If you've got some ideas that you think it would be useful to see, or ways in which you think we could make some changes, we're always interested to hear. So that's a whistle-stop tour of volunteering. And now Clara's going to pick up a few more topics for you.
Great, and thank you, Laura. So the next slide is on communications. I mean, I am hoping that you have received the email and that's why you're here tonight. But if you would like to get in touch with us, you can email us by emailing mail@lincolnsinn.org.uk for general inquiries, and then it will be passed on to the relevant employee. And please do ensure that you have your up-to-date contact details. So that's things like email, home address, and your chamber's organisation. That's really helpful, especially if you're volunteering, to know where you're based. And we have that up to date for things like badges at residential weekends, etc. It is really helpful as when we are organising these educational programmes to know where you are and what you're doing. You can update your details on our website by filling in a keeping in touch form or via our registry team. And if you need some help doing that, I'm more than happy to direct you at the end. We also will be launching in an opt-ins communications exercise, so keep your eyes peeled for that this year. And basically that will be to ensure that you're opted into things that you're interested in. So as most of you are aware, we also have a monthly e-newsletter for members which contains information on things that are coming up that we've already mentioned. And we also occasionally send more targeted items, for example, to junior members, benchers and student members. So if you aren't receiving these, please let us know. It has been known that some of them go into junk mailboxes, so make sure that you move them back into your normal inbox, but let us know if you're not receiving these and we will make sure that you do. So I'm also going to touch upon parking at the inn. So we do have 24-hour security staff and extensive CCTV coverage. Please note parking within the inn is on weekends, evenings and bank holidays is only permitted for residents and permit holders, and those visiting the inn on weekdays for any other purpose will be charged for parking. We have a current rate which is £5 per hour and a maximum of £20 per day, which is payable at the main gatehouse when you arrive. All you need to do is inform our Chief Porter's office at least 24 hours in advance. So give us a call and we'd be happy to help. Taxis and private cars are not charged for dropping passengers off, and there is a 15-minute wait, no charge allowance for this purpose. So members, tenants, residents of the inn are all entitled to purchase annual permits for parking at the inn if you are any of those, and any queries about this and applications should be made to our gatehouse staff, so the Chief Porter and the Deputy Chief Porter, who will be able to provide information on the current rates. That is parking. So shortly, we should be joined by our Head of Catering, Steve Matthews, who is going to join me in talking about member events and initiatives. So as we've mentioned, throughout the year, we provide many different events and activities for our members. So social events like dinners, Sunday lunches, garden parties, family day. We also do a lot of wellbeing talks and professional development events, diversity forums, events like these, which came from one of our committees, our social mobility subcommittee, and an annual EU and human rights law programme. So you can find a full calendar of all of the events that we run on the What's On section of our website. So please do check this out. It's always up to date. So it has all of the dates and the information on how to book the various different charges, whether they're hybrid events, whether they're in-person events. That's the best place to book. It has the most up-to-date calendar of what's on at the inn. A lot of our events are now hybrid and live streamed like this one today. And we're making them much more accessible to all members, both at the Bar of England and Wales, and those of our members who are abroad as well. And we also organise regular events for those based on circuits. So Laura is involved in this as Northern Circuit representative. And we regularly hold events, not just in London, but out on circuit too. All of the details, they're specific to each event, so there's no sort of set cost for each, but they can be found on the What's On section that I mentioned. And it includes things like format, dress code, timings, cancellation policy. And we have a document for the annual in events with prices on the website as well, in case you are wondering what those are.
Now, just whilst we wait for Steve to come and join us from the wine committee, some of you might appreciate why he might get a bit distracted there, but he's going to come and talk to us about lunch and using the MCR and so on. If I could just pick up with a few questions that I've got for our two speakers already. Starting with Sheila, you mentioned the choir, and I used to love walking past the chapel and hearing them. But if we wanted to go and see the choir, would it just be going to the service on Sunday, or are there other events where we'd be able to hear them and see them sing?
I mean, you will mainly hear the choir if you are at something in chapel. I mean, I need to just be straightforward about that. That's not only on Sundays. For example, we had a memorial service the other day where the chapel was absolutely packed for Sir Christopher Slade, a former treasurer, and the choir were in full voice for that. There is the chapel concert coming up, which is a free concert, which is happening on the 24th of May at 6 o'clock, and the concert is free, and so everyone is absolutely welcome to that. It's immediately followed by reception, which there is a charge for, but no one is forced to come into the reception, as it were. So if you would like to hear the choir, what they're doing is that they're on a Jubilee coronation theme this year, and they're singing some lesser known items with that theme.
Fantastic. And we'll just let you get settled in there on the end. Dunstan, some basic questions to the library that I think still make me a little bit paranoid. When you walk in, do you have to sign in?
You do at the moment, but you don't need any membership card. So it's really just to have, and originally we introduced it as a COVID precaution, but it is actually quite useful just so that in the event of fire and things like that, we know how many people are around, and it also actually filters out the occasional interloper who should not be there.
And when you walk in and you're on the main floor, if a desk is available, can you sit there, or are there any particular areas that you should avoid or should particularly go to?
So you can sit anywhere you like, unless you're a bencher, at which point you can sit at the Pugin table, which is the extremely elaborate table that was designed for the Great Exhibition, but there is a little notice on that pointing that out, so you'd be unlikely to mistakenly sit at that one.
And what about the sort of surrounding areas up on the next floor?
So well, right at the very top, there are a number of tables with PCs that you can log into. So you can book those for periods. At the moment, those aren't particularly heavily used, but no, in general terms, that's
okay. Now I know I'll go up there because it always looks quite fun.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right. Steve is going to talk to us now about corporate and private events, members lunch, and using the MCR and accommodation. So all useful stuff.
Isn't it just? My apologies for turning up so late. I was on a previous committee meeting, so flew from the wine committee straight here. So yes, member events. Well, as you likely know, if you've gone onto the website, onto What's On, there is a many varied amount of events that we'd like to engage our members with a wide sort of reflection of style and engagement. So you obviously know dining. We do ordinary dining. It used to be qualifying and now doesn't. So it's a purely social occasion. We do lots of receptions and garden parties if you've been to us, and family days, so a wide and varying amount of engagement throughout the year. We do a lot of other dining. I think as Sunday lunch, obviously a lot of people attest to, as a marvellous opportunity to grab a lovely Sunday roast, and sometimes carvery as well, and for excellent value, if I don't say so myself. So yes, please do. We often update the what's on calendar, and you'll see that for the term prior updated for the term post. And sometimes the term is so jam-packed that would likely do that from 1 month to the next as well. But you can see, as you see on the presentation, for events up until July presently, and then we'll refresh that in time for the next term. Right, so anniversary years, is that the next one?
It is.
Look at that, as if by magic. You obviously know, if not, for those that haven't got the badges, please do. 600th year anniversary, and we've had a few very successful events already. We had our anniversary weekend for those of you that came, thank you so much. And we've had a historic dinner where we had a food historian, Dr. Annie Gray, come by and guide us through 6 or 7 centuries worth of dining experience, and they were very diverse dining experiences, I must say. But we will do some other events. We've got some other events coming. We've got a marvelous open gardens tour. We've got a weekend of great exposure of the inn that is in association with Open Gardens, I think the organisation is. And our head gardener is ready to guide you all the way through the estate as well. If you want to find out about that, you'll see that in the what's on as well. And a lot of other engaging things we've done with the MCR as well. We'll probably come on to that, but there are engaging tastings and events out on the terrace as well. So please, again, look at what's on and you'll see things pop up. For those of you that have ticked yes, I want to hear more within the emails, you'll have specific ones for the MCR as well, if you're interested. Corporate events, you may or may not know that there is discount to members also. So if you have family members that may want to be married in such an auspicious estate, or if you've got an anniversary to celebrate, or even if you've got a small network event in your chambers that you want to perhaps look over to us, you will see by the lecture theatre that some of you are sat in, or for those of you that aren't and you're doing it hybrid, hi. But you'll also know we have that facility too. And there are a great many other places within the estate that we can take on either historic or very purposeful meetings. So please do ask the events team for either a personal consideration or a company consideration for any of those drinks. And in the summer, as you know, we have this marvelous, I call it the marquee. Anne doesn't like the word marquee, but a tent outdoor reception opportunity, cracking fun. We'll do some set events as well as for those people that are interested, receptions for companies. We've already got, I think, 9 events booked up out of the 21 days that we've got available. Another thing to look out for, if you haven't earmarked yourself, for the first time this year, we're looking at lunar events to do some cinema on the North Lawn. So we're going to have a pop-up cinema. We've shown it on some of our things, but if you're interested, please do. I think we've got The Devil Wears Prada and Notting Hill on 2 occasions. So very easy going with your glass of wine or champagne or Prosecco. But that would be great fun on the North Lawn. So please do think of us. Right, now, members' lunch in hall. You'll no doubt be familiar with our members' hall lunch. And we've very happily come back to the Great Hall, having been in the Old Hall for quite a while. We serve an a la carte lunch, for those of you that don't know. That's a beautiful daily changing menu. 3-course menus. You can choose 3 courses, you can choose 1 course, that's absolutely fine. But that's available between 12:30 and 2:30, Monday to Friday. On the odd occasion, and I mean very odd, you may have to go back to the Old Hall, but we strive to ensure that hall lunch is not messed about with. For those that want to book more than 3, please do the member events email address that you'll see on the screen. But otherwise, feel free to just rock up. There isn't any reservation system. It's first come, first served. There are some days that are busier than others. Fish and chips and sticky toffee pudding, watch out, Friday is popular. So just make sure you come well within time. So 12:30 onward. And the MCR, there's a lovely picture of Joe coming up if you do the old. There we are. Now, you'll all know this brilliant and engaging character, I hope. And if you don't, then please do. I see some people have already been in today. Fantastic. Joe is our manager, and what a manager he is. The MCR couldn't be anything without him and his team. You'll be sure of a warm welcome, an incredible lunch. I mean, this is great food. Our chef is absolutely fantastic, and he leads a very good team. And I dare say, and obviously I'm biased, but it's well worth the money. Come in there for an a la carte lunch or small plates in the evening, but either you'll be rest assured of a great ambience. And for those of you that haven't visited since our refurbishment prior to the pandemic, please do, because it's historically reflective of what it used to be now. I mean, obviously the furniture wasn't there and it wasn't mezzanine, but you'll see that the ceiling looks like an old Victorian kitchen, as it did. And we've taken literally all the way back to the stone to reveal an incredible interior. And if you have a look, for those of you that haven't been to the MCR, on the far right-hand corner, there's a photo of what it did used to look like before it was all done back in the 50s. Do take a look. We do say, please book. Please book, because not only is it helpful for our chefs to understand how many he's cooking for, but on busy days, we hate to say sorry to somebody. So please make sure you make a reservation. We take group reservations as well. So if you want to bring the chambers down, absolutely brilliant. What better place to come and have a few glasses or lunch. And again, contact Joe through the mcrlincolnsinn.org.uk, and you'll find a very accommodating person to take your booking. Finally, I think it's finally, sorry if I've waxed too lyrically, members accommodation. Our little secret, we've got 3 rooms. At present, they're not available, unfortunately, which is a real shame. Because it's part of the refurbishment plan that we've been doing over in the building. But they are accessible by 26 old buildings, and they are 3 well-appointed apartments, I should say. And we hope to have a 4th when we come out of this, which would be fantastic. But the pricing is very keen. And, you know, you can have a look at 1, 2, and 3 night stays, or even block out for a whole week, depending on whether you want that for business or pleasure. There's a weekend rate as well as a midweek rate. When we do get them back, which fingers crossed, depending on what the estates team tell me, hopefully early 2023, and they'll be back online. But for the moment, should you be interested, we've given a link to a link to Club Quarters Hotel, which is on the other side of Lincoln's Inn Fields. And there's also a link to a company which we've affiliated on your behalf to get you discounted prices. So New Breed are a company that go and hunt great discounts so that you don't have to. So take a look at those. And that's about me, I would say, Clara.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for that. I've actually got some questions to start the ball rolling with some of the basics.
Fire away.
Certainly with the members accommodation, I can't wait for that to come back. It's phenomenal value for money for those of you that need to be in London, whether for fun or for work. And the fact that they have kitchens in there, again, if you're staying for a few days, can be quite nice.
And washing machines.
Oh, really? That didn't cross my mind, but okay. It's a really useful space, and the staff are fantastically helpful all the way through from booking to usually the security guys are great at keeping my suitcase, so I haven't got to go through security with it all, but I don't know if I should say that. So that will be great. Now, in terms of members' lunch, how do you get in? What door do we walk through for those of us?
It's a really good point, because it changes each day, it seems, with the estates department. But for the moment, the regular door that you should walk in is the Ceremonial Steps, which you'll find on the south end of the Great Hall. So as you come past the Ashworth Centre and you're up the steps to the East Terrace, first staircase, straight up there. Yeah. If you're a bencher, you're going to come up from the other side toward Dunstan's library, and you'll go up the library steps. But please do. If that entrance isn't available, there will be signage for the alternative route,
Great.
which there has been on
And
a few occasions.
when you walk, well, in fact, I should ask whilst we're talking about access, is there an accessible route for people with mobility issues?
There is, and that's varied at this point at the moment, depending on which lift is working. And so there is an accessible route. What I would suggest is prior to your arrival, ensure that you've given us a shout, call us on member events or on the phone number, or just make sure that we're aware and we can guide you all the way through. At present, the accessible route would be to come on the East Terrace and then through reception and then through to the lift that will take you up to the upper vestibule and then into the hall.
Okay, so
But you will need to be guided at that point. So just give me a shout.
and is that reception towards the library stairs?
That is,
Yeah.
but not quite getting to
Yeah.
the library stairs.
Okay, fab. And then when you go into lunch, do you have to sign in and sign your guests in?
Do you know what? No, you don't.
Okay.
You'll see a lovely lady, Adeline, on arrival, and she will guide you. We know you pretty much by face now, as our guys tend to look after lunch, been there for the last 25 years. So just say, thank you, 3 for lunch. You'll be maximum 4 for lunch, you and 3 guests.
Yeah.
And then we'll find you a spot and we'll guide you to that.
Great. And in terms of ordering, because it's different in each of the different inns, how you're served, this is a la carte.
Mhm.
Does someone come and take your order?
They do. So we're the only inn to do a la carte at this point. I think Grays is sort of meddling in between buffet and not. But we will take your order at your table. You'll find the menu given to you on arrival. So usually for those people that don't have a lot of time, they would have already thought on their journey to the table, and there'll be somebody hovering ready to take your order.
Okay. And if people are thinking of maybe taking some friends, but they want to treat them, but they're not sure about the price, are the prices on the menu online for people to check in advance?
They are. And in fact, you can plan your week accordingly, as we put all of the menus for Monday through to Friday, all there for you with the prices. So you can pretty much plot your week by the lunches. And I know Dunstan does. There's lasagna, but fish and chips will likely always be on Friday. But there will be alternatives for those folks that don't really like it.
And then payment, do you pay at the table like you would in a restaurant, or do you go up to a till on the way out like I think
That's
you
a
used to
really
do it
good
in a
point. So
temple?
at present, we ask you to go to see Adeline, who's our cashier, and she'll take your payment. You will tell her what you've ordered.
Okay.
And she will quickly tot it up and take your credit card or your debit card. We are not taking cash payments at present.
Okay. And then my notes here say the dress code is smart casual. What does that mean?
No ripped jeans, no flip-flops.
What about trainers?
Absolutely, that's fine.
Yep.
So long as you've got a reasonably casual pair of trousers, gosh, can be jeans, but need to not be any holes in your jeans, if that makes sense. I think the fair rule of thumb is if you've got casual day at work, what would you turn up in?
Yeah.
It would be a good rule of thumb.
And is that the same sort of dress code at the MCR?
Yes, entirely.
Okay. And then you said we should book for the MCR, but I know I've rolled in at odd times for late lunch. Is it always worth people sticking their heads in if they just want to give it a try, but expect maybe you won't get in?
I mean, there are 2 reasons why I asked to please book. And one of those is it's so much easier for the chef to consider what he's preparing. If he suddenly gets a busy day, we would hate to say, I'm awfully sorry, we're out of that particular popular dish. But if we're forewarned, then we can plan accordingly.
But can people go in just for drinks?
Yes, absolutely. We've got 2 lovely terraces. You may see that we've put some more furniture on the East Terrace as well. But the garden terrace down in the south overlooking New Square is a beautiful sun catch in the evening. Perfect place to have a glass after work.
Now I know the terrace that is, as you walk up the stairs, it's immediately on the left. Which one's that?
So the immediate East Terrace, I think you're referring to,
Okay.
is the big long terrace that goes across the whole of the Great Hall.
Ah, right, okay.
And then the garden terrace, previously called Southern Terrace, but since the gardener's done a fab job, we'd want to promote it as our garden terrace.
Yeah.
So that's the one overlooking New Square.
And when you go into the MCR, do you have to sign yourself or your guests in?
No, hopefully you would have made a reservation already.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to ask, table for 2, please, and we'll take your name.
Okay. And is there a limit on guest numbers in the MCR?
No, in fact, do rock up. But if you're landing on us for 15 people, be expecting surprises.
Yeah. Now, if you walk in and there isn't a member of staff there immediately, should you just pop over to the bar and just have a quick chat and ask, is there a table, or should you wait there for somebody to come to you?
Please, that's a very good point. Hopefully we've got some really, really engaging folks. They hopefully would have grabbed you and told someone to go on over there, which is the case. When we're in a busy period and there might be a few on the terrace or back in the kitchen, someone will appear. But Arseny or Donate are always behind the bar, so please just ask.
And if you're just going for a drink, can you just go and take a seat at the bar?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay, well, hopefully that covers quite a few of the questions that people might have been a bit afraid to ask about. I think one of the dinners that was up on the screen was the diversity dinner, which is celebrating diversity of our members at the inn, but is particularly celebrating this year LGBTQIA+ members. If anyone would like to go, whether you identify in that way or you're an ally, there are going to be tables hosted by individuals ready to chat to you about anything. Doesn't just have to be protected characteristics, but about anything to try and make you feel welcome. And I know the dress code there is, I think, smart with a splash of colour. Gender norms need not apply. So not that they ever tend to need to, but we're really encouraging people to come feel comfortable at that particular dinner, which is coming up next month. Now, in fact, here's another daft question I have for you, Steve. When you go for dinners, when do you have to wear a gown, and do you need your own one?
Do you need your own gown?
Gown.
Oh, fair point. No is the short answer, and it really does depend on what invitation that you're receiving. If it's a qualifying session, there will be gowns. If there isn't a qualifying session, but the only other occasion would be ordinary dining, I think there's gowns on ordinary dining, but that's more a social but formal occasion. Any other occasion is you will be told.
Okay, fab. Right, hopefully those are some of the questions people might have had. Does anybody in the room have questions for any of our speakers that they'd like to ask at this point? We've got one now. Have we got the microphone? No? Do you want to just shout it out and I'll repeat it so they can hear us on Zoom?
No, that's fine. So I was just wondering, do you need some sort of membership identity card or something to access any of the facilities? Or...
Okay, so the question for those of you online that might not have heard that is, do you need any kind of membership ID card to access the inn's facilities? So starting with dining and the MCR, do you need a card?
At present, no.
Library? Oh, sorry.
Go on.
At present, no. Does that mean we're going to change then? We're going to go on today?
No, I mean, there are ID cards for students that are being rolled out, and perhaps I'll leave that for Clara to discuss.
Yes, so just for student members at the moment, they have a digital membership card, but for any other members, so-called members and benchers, you don't need a membership card to access any of our facilities.
So not for any at all? No. Fab. Okay, any other questions in the room?
I've got two. One is about chapel. Is there disabled access to it? I see the steps.
Yeah.
And the second one is around dining, because I'm actually thinking, I've been a member of the inn for much longer than I've never actually used the chapel. And I'd like to go and I'd like to bring someone to so I want to know about that, and also whether or not it would be possible to dine.
And I'll just repeat the question. It's just the microphones here so the people on Zoom can hear. So the question was, is there disabled access to the chapel? And what are the options for dining afterwards in terms of any guests that you might want to bring to chapel?
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. It occurred to me later on that I should have said that when I was talking about how off-putting the stairs are for everyone. We do have a lift. It is preferable usually that there is someone to help with the lift. And that if it's during the week when it is someone just wanting to have a look round, the gatehouse will help anyone with the lift if that's necessary. If it's actually at a planned event, we would have someone there and available to do that. So and with the new lift, I can say that with a bit more security than with the old lift, where we did have someone's grandmother at one stage singing the wedding hymns in the lift as she got stuck in it. But fortunately, we've not had that happen since. Dining after chapel, Yes, I mean, what you want is the chapel calendar, which is there online. You'll find chapel on the About section on the top of the website, on the drop-down menu from that. It used to be that there was weekly Sunday lunch, as I was indicating, because of ordering times and post-pandemic other pressures. There's not a weekly lunch, but we do have lunch for special events, and you're absolutely welcome to book in and your guests for that. And indeed for coffee beforehand, that you don't need to book for, you just turn up.
Just a question on the Sunday lunches for people that haven't been before. Is there a formal seating plan, or do you just go and grab a couple of chairs for you and your guests?
There's normally a seating plan because you also get a drink after chapel before you go into lunch. It's easy to find the seating plan, and there's always someone around who will help find it. Where we've had groups of people book, we've generally managed, I've worked with member events, and we've done a table for those people so that people are actually able to, I mean, you will always end up sitting with your guests. We don't separate people in that kind of way, but if it's a larger group, then people have had a table that's theirs.
Okay, we're going to mix it up with some questions from the Zoom. So Clara, I think you've got the questions there.
Yeah, we have had a question online for Dunstan. So can a member of the Inn get books from the library in PDF format?
Well, you can access the Bloomsbury law titles by contacting us, and we can set you up with username and password. If you want a chapter of a book, we can usually provide that as part of the document supply service, but the limitation on that is usually one chapter or 10% of the book, whichever is greater. So basically you can't get a whole book sent as a PDF.
Great. We've also had another question about membership cards. So how do I obtain a student membership card? I can answer that. So when you become a member of the Inn, a student member, you are given one. It's a digital card. It used to be a sort of hard copy card in the past. So you will be given that when you become a member of the Inn.
Now I can see a question here which says that someone has filtered for circuit events and there aren't any at the moment on the website. How often are they planned? Not as often as they are down here, but I think don't filter just by circuit events, because the hybrid events we always have in mind focusing on what's also useful for our members outside of London. And if you are interested, for example, in teaching advocacy on circuit to the bar students, which is something we do, a much lesser commitment. It's usually not quite a full day as a weekend, then again, get in touch with member events and your details will be passed on to the relevant circuit organizer. And again, that's a good way to start to become involved, find out who is a member on circuit, who is organizing these events, but they also do come out by email as well. But obviously we don't have the facilities in the building there, so it's not as easy for us to organize events, but there are usually treasurers' dinners on various circuits each year, but not one on each circuit each year, just because of the treasurer's other commitments.
Yeah, and we are planning one in Bristol in July for those of you who might be joining us who are in Bristol, Cardiff area. So watch out for that. That will be going live soon.
Now, do we have any more questions in the room? Okay, well, I'm just going to pick up with a few that we got sent in advance before we're going to have some refreshments. One question was about, I'm an employed barrister working in-house for a large global manufacturer. How can I contribute to the Inn and training? Well, hopefully I've given you an idea of volunteering already, but in this room at the moment, we have two very senior employed barristers who contribute significantly to the Inn. That's not to say you have to be senior, but it doesn't have to be that you're in a courtroom every day and that the only thing you can teach is cross-examination, for example, if perhaps that's something that your job doesn't involve and you maybe don't do quite as much. Even if you were to come and teach, for example, on the student advocacy, at that stage, it's purely submissions advocacy, and it tends to be something that people are a bit more comfortable with. And you'll always be set up with another trainer, at least one who's very experienced, usually two, and you're the third or fourth trainer when you're learning. So we're not expecting you to know exactly how to teach straight away. and then you can observe the ethics session and case analysis before you get involved in teaching it. Same with the talks that come through at the weekend. So absolutely, you can help as an employed barrister. Okay, we've picked up a couple of them already, additional questions. Clara, there was a question about what help or support is there for people returning to practice after career breaks, whether for childcare reasons or otherwise. What sort of support does the Inn give for non-practicing employed or retired barristers as well?
So we are hoping to set up in the hopefully the near future a mentoring scheme for called members to help with that. So that would be for those people who, as Laura said, returning to practice, perhaps coming back from parental leave or changing practice areas. So once we get to a stage that we are able to facilitate that on our CRM system, we're hoping to launch that. So do look out for that. In terms of non-practicing and retired barrister judges, you are still welcome to volunteer. There might be a slightly more limited number of opportunities. They are all on our website in the volunteering section, and we normally will say, depending on the different volunteering opportunity, who we're looking for. And there are plenty of sort of retired barristers, judges who do volunteer as well. So I'd suggest looking basically on that volunteering web page and seeing what's available to you.
Now, Steve, we've got another practical question here about dining. When and how do people pay for dinners rather than lunches?
Then pre-book. So the member event. So as soon as you've been on the What's On page and identified your dinner or experience of choice, you'll see a link to member events. Press on that, and then it'll automatically come up with your inquiry. And then your payment will be continued through that journey. There are some events that we have that are Eventbrite led, where you'll be sent on to the link to make a payment there, and some that are directly payment received within the office.
And we also had a question about the cost of events, with a concern being that some of the costs, I think maybe Grande, for example, was thought to be a little bit prohibitive for some people to attend. You talked about some of the events that are held in the MCR. What's the sort of range for potentially less expensive but events, rather than just turning up and having a couple of drinks yourself, that people can get involved in?
Sure. Well, we try to ensure that we've got a wide and varied amount of price points of entry, if that makes sense. So we do promotions within the MCR, and it may be as simple as a drink and a meal deal that we've got that we want to promote that's specifically around an occasion or a time. But there are other events that we have that are planned as well. So we've got quiz nights that we start from, which are, simple, but, great fun, I have to say, because I'm the quiz master sometimes. But we'll have sausage and mash or something on an evening and a good quiz fun with a couple of drinks. And that's quite, entry at about 10 or 15 pounds, I think, something like that. And then you're right, we do have Grandes. It's tradition steeped in twice a year. And yes, there are different price points for that too. So you'll find that there are a student price, a bar member's price, and obviously a bench price. And we try to keep it as keenly costed, but as you'll know, the cost of food and wine and the staff to be able to do that. And we find that, for those particular occasions, we do go all out. Yeah. So yeah, take a look at what's something, and if there are any questions, please feel free, email member event, say, oh, this is a sort of price that I'm looking at, what is available to me throughout the year, and we'll gladly be able to tell you those opportunities too.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add to that, like this event tonight, we do many free events, so networking events, diversity forums, social mobility events. So keep your eyes peeled for those, because there are plenty of these types of events that are free, and we do have receptions after to network as well. They're not all paid events.
Yeah, and I think we had a chocolate tasting at one point, didn't we?
Yes.
So there's a much wider range there that I think people appreciate to become involved in. I think we've got a question just at the back.
I've got thyroid issues. Sorry, you've mentioned social and spiritual needs being addressed for members. And I was just have a question under sort of support for members. Mental health is my forte, so I just wondered whether you deliver any sort of mental health support for members or awareness training, that type of thing, or whether that's something that the inn would be interested in sort of exploring.
So I don't know if that will have been picked up on the Zoom, but we were being asked about what sort of mental health events, training, awareness the inn does. Quite a lot. For example, there was, I think in the autumn of last year, a diversity forum event that was about neurodiversity, which was a panel event and a good opportunity for people to ask questions and discuss matters about mental health, the well-being, well-being and social, I should say. Social and well-being, and you're getting that slightly wrong. Social and well-being events are frankly all underpinned by the mental health of barristers, because we know that that is something that needs to be focused on and good mental health facilitated. And so really any event that well-being run always have that in mind. The equality and diversity and inclusion events, again, I think there are more that will be planned in the future aimed at mental health matters. So it's not to say there's everything and there's formal training, which is what you might get perhaps through chambers or through the Bar Council perhaps, but it's certainly right to say that there is a significant focus in that direction and consideration of it. And if it's something that people are interested in, talking about wellbeing, talking about mental health, having some more easygoing support rather than perhaps asking for it formally as well, absolutely the wellbeing events will facilitate ways that that can be discussed. And I think Clara, you've got some additional points there.
Yes, we do have a page on the website that is called, under the member section, support for members, and it touches upon the various different external bodies that you can use as well, such as the Bar Council, the Barristers Benevolent Association, and there are plenty of resources on there. We do have, as Laura's mentioned, the Social and Wellbeing Subcommittee, who organise around 4 events a year. We recently run one on vicarious trauma. So we're always open to ideas about future wellbeing events and initiatives. And if you do have any, we're always open to hearing about them, about our future programs. So yes, there is stuff, and there's definitely resources on the website as well if you need them.
Now, I think just one final point to conclude on. Well, if you are involved already or you're quite senior and wanting to become more involved, we've heard talk about benchers. We know that they're the senior sort of governing people in the inn. But Clara, how do people go about becoming a bencher, and do they have to have been already in the inner sanctum to get picked?
No, in fact, we will be running an event specifically about becoming a bencher this year. So keep an eye out for that. The date hasn't been set, where we will go through the sort of ins and outs of the process. I'd very much encourage people to apply. There is information again on our website, a section under members, which is called Becoming a Bencher, and there is information on the process there, but do get in touch if you have any questions. I believe they've recently changed the rules on your eligibility to become a bencher as well, so it's probably less years call than you think as well, with regard to that.
Okay, well, wrapping that up then, I think it's probably, oh, sorry.
I haven't heard much mention of Domus nights, and if people want to volunteer and who haven't been in the inn for a while, or they don't want to do training, but they just want to meet people and dip their foot back into the inn again, Domus dining nights are worth attending. It doesn't matter whether you're an employed member of the bar or in independent practice. Students need to hear from every section, and Domus nights are well worth attending, especially for people who want to dip their foot back in because they haven't been here for a while and they're not quite sure what's what.
That's a fantastic point, Nick. And do you wear a gown at Domus night?
I was going to correct Steve on gowns, but I thought I'd leave it for another occasion. In theory, gowns are only worn during dining in term time. It doesn't matter whether it's a qualifying or non-qualifying event, but the tradition always was dinners in term time require gowns. Whether that will remain the case, time will tell.
And I think when you walk in, there'd be a rack of gowns there to borrow, and that tells you put a gown on, essentially, just in case people couldn't hear on the Zoom. And that's an excellent point from Nick that no doubt we will add to the script for next time, that if you want to get involved, going to Domus dinner, which you might remember from when you were a student, is where they mix the students, the bar and the bench, is really useful. You probably all remember the conversations that took place, who you were sat next to. And if we want to see greater diversity and inclusion, and just collegiality at the end, then come along, get involved, don't make it all the same people each time. And the students will really, really benefit from that. And I did say it was like the last question, but there is one final point that's just come through to ask whether there are any tours that people can take of the inn. Now, as I understand it, there actually aren't, other than on special occasions. For example, at the anniversary weekend last month there were, but everything's on the website, the plan is there. And I think the headline for this is, don't be afraid to engage with this estate, to go for a wander round. Yes, if you come in later at the evening, you're going to have to come in through the main gate. But if it's before 7 p.m, you can go in and out of all the different little side gates, and you're allowed to be here. If you walk into someone's chambers, the receptionist might ask why you're there, but you can go around, you can look at these buildings, you are absolutely allowed to be here. So have a look for when there are the tours for more special occasions, but take yourself out, have a look and enjoy the space that you're a member of. So thank you very much to everyone on our panel for this evening. Thank you all for coming along. Thank you for those of you who have watched online. As we say, this will be going on the YouTube channel. So if you think colleagues would benefit from seeing a bit of this information, have a chat to them about it, or just ping them over the video and they can always skip through if there are particular points they're interested in. We're going to have the drinks reception now. As I say, come up and chat to those of us, particularly with the blue badges, but don't feel it's just us you've got to come and talk to as well. And Clara will be here and be able to ask lots of questions, answer lots of questions as well. So thank you very much, everyone, and good evening.
Thank you.
And one final thank you, and that's to Laura for so brilliantly chairing on her birthday.
Happy birthday.
Good, thank you.